Digital audio health by Simatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has she been inspired by a calling, crafted her journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversations and to use them to recognize if they're happening in your life. Our guest today is Sharón Lynn Wyeth, who is a creator of Neimology science and author of 4 books, radio host, and keynote speaker. International name expert Sharón Lynn Wyeth is the founder and creator of Neimology science, the study of the placement of letters in a name after 15 years of research, followed by 3 years of testing in over 70 countries. She has evaluated thousands of names since 1995. Her best-selling book, Know the Name, Know the Person, is the first in the sequence, followed by Know the Name, Know the Spirit, and Know the Name, Know How to Connect. You may have seen her on Good Day LA, New York City's Fox News, Good Morning Arizona, and in various other cities on NBC, CBS, and ABC. Or you've heard her in interviews on any one of the hundreds of radio shows. Today, she is hired by human resource departments in choosing appropriate candidates to interview, lawyers in how to present cases to judges, and individuals who wish to know themselves better and maximize their ability to connect with others. She also assists nationally and internationally in names for new businesses and new products. Sharón is a frequent guest on both radio and television. Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show, Sharón.
You're a visual learner, Rhonda. I love
it. Thank you.
You know, that's why I put the accent mark on my name, was to help the visual learners remember that this one said differently. And I love all of your effort in correcting what you would do naturally to then accommodate. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Well, listen, I'm so intrigued to be interviewing you on such a fascinating subject. You caught my attention when you spoke at a workshop that I attended. And tell our listeners, what ignited your curiosity about names and their meanings?
Well, I was a school teacher, and in my 7th year of starting the school year, and I was putting down all the kids' names randomly, my brain was not doing it randomly. It was doing it as if it already knew the students. So it didn't even dawn on me till I was doing the seating chart for my 4th class. And I went, wait a minute, I'm acting like I already know these guys and all they have is their names. So I went back and wrote down what my impression was of everybody's name. And I put it away until winter break because I wanted to get to know the students for who they were. And when I looked at it, I thought, okay, my brain has picked up some kind of patterning. How do I make what's unconscious conscious? Now, my brain is thoroughly trained in patterns because I was a math major in college and I have my master's. And so I worked on it. It took me 15 years to figure out all the patterns. And then it got tested in over 70 countries for accuracy before I wrote the first book.
Wonderful. And so today, how are you helping people with names?
You know, Rhonda, the quality of our lives is so important, and it's dependent on the quality of our relationships.
Right.
And so when you can see somebody's name and see what their challenges are, what they came to experience, and who they are, you stop all the judgments, you stop taking things personally, and you watch what they do and you go, oh yeah, that's that letter over there. Yep, now they're showing me these, and it just becomes entertaining in its own way. But relationships become deeper and more intimate because there isn't any judgment, and you know how to communicate in such a way that you have really good, intimate conversations. And so you get the depth of understanding of somebody. and everybody enjoys it more because they know they're not being judged.
Mm-hmm. And I know if, myself, I'm around many people a year. And when you're in a job where you are talking to a lot of different people and you've been doing it year after year after year, and a name comes up, you say, oh yes, that's Kevin. And the name Kevin reminds me of this. And so our brain can naturally fill in that information. But I mean, you've taken it a whole step further, right? And you've created a business with this. Can you give us an example of how you break down a name?
Sure. Do you mind if I use yours?
Oh, yes, please go ahead. That'd be wonderful.
Okay. So the first letter in the first name is our first impression of somebody, and yours is an R. So that tells us that you've got a rebellious streak. You're not going to do what you're told. You're going to do what is truthful for you. And you don't appreciate liars in any respect. Once they've lied, they're out of your life. You may have to be polite to them, but you're not going to do anything with them more than you have to.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's our first impression of you, is that she's her own person. Okay. Because of the R. Then we go to the first vowel in the first name, which in your case is an O. And so we'd look at the O and we'd say, okay, this is somebody who likes to be their own CEO, or at least have autonomy in their job, that they are nurturing and very good to the people around them, but they expect loyalty in return, that they can multiple task. They're good at that. One of the only letters that can. And then you make a list. You like to be useful or helpful. And so somebody asks you, hey, Rhonda, would you mind helping me in this way? And you go, sure. And the list, it goes on the bottom of the list, and you're working off the top of the list. Now, if that person comes in and nags you and says, hey, Rhonda, how come you haven't gotten this done yet? You don't like to be nagged. So then it goes out of the middle wherever it currently is, and it goes back on the bottom of the list to teach that person not to nag you. However, if that person would come in and say, hey, Rhonda, I'm so appreciative you said you were going to do this because I don't have to worry about it. I know you're going to get it done. It goes then up higher on the list because that person's already thanking you for it. Okay. So in that first vowel of an O, those are the people that we all like to follow. Okay. You just have this natural quality about you that you can handle managing a lot of projects and a lot of people all at the same time. And you can keep all the balls in the air and you don't ever drop one. It's just marvelous. And then we're going to go to the last letter in the first name, which is an A. And that A tells us that you decided it was important to be liked. So you worked on you and you made yourself likable, but you're not going to change who you are to get somebody to like you. Because truthfully, if they don't like you after all the work you did on you, there's a problem with them. Okay.
Okay.
And then we're going to go to the middle letters. Okay. So the H in your name is what I call the holy letter, which says God's important and spirituality is important. And your relationship with God is important. Okay. So that's a spirituality. And then we look at the D, because D's and H's go together. And D says that there's some religious knowledge also, that there's a balance there between religion and spirituality. In other words, you have a foundation in one, but then you've taken off on your own and made it personal and integrated it. Okay. Then I'm looking at the O-N combination. And the O-N combination, and this is for your wonderful producer also, Cameron, because he's got that O-N. And it says that you are logical and deductive, and you deduce things, and you go step by step in your learning. So you'd be good naturally at math, music, mechanics, computers, engineering, anything that has a step-by-step approach, because that's how your brain works. Okay. Then I'm going to drop your first name into your last name.
Okay.
So in the last name, it says you bring people to you that like to take advantage of your smarts and sometimes take more than what you'd like them to take.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So therefore you would react by saying, I've got to work on safety so that people aren't taking what I don't want to give. Okay. That you're naturally generous, but hey, sometimes people go over the boundaries. So you've got to have firmer boundaries. Okay. So you would have learned good boundaries because of that in your last name. Then it says also in your last name, you bring people to you that want to make the world a better place. Okay. And so therefore you're attracting that type of personality to you, because therefore you're going to become more and more like that yourself, even though it's not in your first name. And then you have another combination in your last name with that NT that says you're going to be, that people coming to you are organized, they have good memories, and they're at the top of their game. And therefore, what are you being influenced by? So what's the pressure on you but to be organized, have a good memory, and be at the top of your game? See, because that's your environment. And then you're bringing people that are flexible. That's the other thing in that last name, and that's with the capital G. And so all of that is influencing you to be more like that for yourself, even though it wasn't initially in your first name. So that's a real Reader's Digest version of some of what I can get out of a name.
Well, that's incredible. And I mean, you're telling me this stuff and I'm, you can't see me, but I'm nodding, you're so right on. So tell me about the origination of a name. Is it before our soul comes here? Have we decided what our name is going to be? Are we appointed that name? How do we end up with our name? How do people figure that's the name for that child when the child has arrived here?
When there were a lot less religions on the planet, when I jokingly say before they multiplied and divided and everybody made up their own, the core religions all agreed on some basic information. And one piece of information was that the incoming soul impresses upon the person that's going to be naming them, because in different traditions, it's a different person.
Right.
But they impress upon the person that's going to be naming them what they want to be called. So we name ourselves. And that's why the name fits. And the name is literally the blueprint for this lifetime.
It's just fascinating how the study that you've done and how you're able to, and you're actually helping people, aren't you?
I love what I get to do, because every time I do a reading, the first half hour of the reading, I spend 5 minutes and I talk fast. So I spend 5 minutes on why your soul chose that woman to be your mother, what you gained from having her. You can see all the negatives for yourself. You don't need help. Okay. But I want to show people, why would you pick that person? What did you gain? And then 5 minutes on why did you pick your dad? And what did you gain from having that man as your dad? And then I go through how you stack the deck, the strengths that you gave yourself. Rhonda, it is amazing to me how many people don't know what they're good at and what their strengths are, or it hasn't dawned on them yet. And so I go through the strengths in the name, and then I say those strengths are going to help you with the 7 areas where your soul wanted more experience. And so I don't think they're lessons. I think it's experience we're after, because that's how we learn. And so the first 2 are what I call the boomerangs. And they're the ones that come back over and over again your entire life. So you get really good at the first 2. And then the middle 3 out of the 7 are what I call the one and dones. It's like, once you've got that skill, it's like picking up a tool and you know how to use it. Then you just rinse and repeat when you need it. Okay. And the last 2 are, when you get those 2, you get gifts immediately. Once you've conquered those, the universe goes, yay, here's a gift. Make your life easier. Okay. And then those 7 lead up to the overall purpose of why you're here. So I cover all of that in a half hour. And then after that, we talk about questions that they have. I always say, if you could ask the universe anything, what do you want to know? That answer probably is sitting in your name for you. And then we can compare your name with somebody else's name and see where you're going to get along and what's going to attract you to that person. And then where the problem spots are, what's going to repel you from that person. And the coolest part is the solutions to the repel and what needs to shift is also sitting in a name.
So when you talk about the first 2 of the 7, and you said boomerang, what does that, like, I know what a boomerang means. It keeps on coming back, but can you give an example of a person who would be in those first 2 steps where it is the boomerang?
Okay. So let's say one of those 2 steps is people skills and patience.
Okay.
Then every time you think, okay, I'm getting along with the people in my life, somebody's going to say something or do something, and you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, how could I ever get along with that person?
Okay.
Okay. So, and it's going to constantly happen. You're never going to get too comfortable. You're constantly going to be improving on your people skills, your tact, your patience, not resenting others, and not being envious of others. All of that is in people skills. So if that's one of the skills that you came down to do, that every time you think, okay, I understand this level of interaction with people, somebody's going to come in your world and upset the apple cart.
Oh, yes. As soon as we get comfortable, that's exactly what happens.
Exactly. So that's
Right.
a boomerang. It's like you can never quite get comfortable or stop learning in this area, because something's going to happen that keeps you growing around this particular topic, whatever your two boomerangs are.
Mm-hmm. And you've written books on the subject. I mean, the first one is Know the Name, Know the Person. So, you're teaching people how to recognize repetitions in their life with names. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a different kind of name book, because
Okay.
Rhonda, most name books, you look up the person's name and they give you a couple of words.
Right.
This
Okay.
person is like this. And this is saying, where do they get that from? How do they
Right.
know? And what if I want more than a couple of words? I mean, I can talk for 2 hours on what I see in a name. And so this book literally teaches you to look at the letters, the placement, and the combinations of the letters next to each other, because they may interact a little differently. Okay. So you're looking at those. So you're learning how to read any name from any language, no matter how it's spelled, to get to know that person.
Mm-hmm. And it's very effective for people who are, as I read in your introduction, who are hiring people. They want to hire people who have certain attributes that they wouldn't know unless they read that book.
I can
Or
give you
they
so
spoke with
many
you.
stories
Mm-hmm.
on that are really kind of fun. The company send me the job description and the
Okay.
list of names that have applied. And then I rank them. This one has the most that you're looking for. This one has, because I have to know, what are you looking for? That's your job
Right.
description. And then I rank them. And I did that for a company out of Australia. He was given a gift of a reading for his birthday, and then decided to hire me for once a week for going over names of who they were going to be potentially hiring. And he didn't say a word. He wouldn't give me the names ahead of time so I could do my prep work on a name. And he just said, nope, I want to make sure you don't have a chance to look anything up on the internet or Google a person or whatever. And I thought, I don't have time to do that. I'm teaching during the day. And so,
Yes.
So anyway, I thought, okay, well, then you're paying for more of my think time. You won't get quite as much information. And so he never said anything, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, until we were 4.5 months into this 6-month contract, and we were doing it once a week.
Right.
And he said to me, for 4.5 months, my team has read all the resumes, interviewed all the people, called all the references, and given me my number one and number two. And you have hit that number one and number two within 10 to 15 minutes. Exactly right on. But now your number one and two are a reverse of our number one and two. Why?
Okay.
So I told him why I put the one second. I said, you'd be happy with either one, but this is why I put him second. And he was so kind. And he said, you've been so accurate. We would not know that about that person. It would take us a year of him working with us before we figured that out. And you've been so accurate. We're going to hire on your recommendation over ours. And that was a good 7 or 8 years ago now. And their manager's still right. But they've learned to do a lot of it for themselves. And so sometimes now I'll get notes. Sometimes it's, give your impression on these people that we're going to hire. But sometimes it's like, we're having a concern between this employee and that employee, and how can we solve that? Looking at their names,
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see the potential problems and you can see the solutions.
Right.
And then sometimes it's like companies will write and say, this person's 3-month review or 1-year review is coming up. Where do they need to improve? What can we tell them? And I laugh because I think you've worked with them all this time and you're asking me.
Right.
And yet the name will tell you, because you look at what are they here to experience. And so you want them to get more experiences in that area, in that job, so that's where they can improve. And so all of that's interesting. I mean, I love doing that kind of work, just like when we're helping an attorney plan for, choosing the jury. And I always start with, do you want a jury that's more emotionally based or more mentally based? How do you plan on winning this? Are you going to have to appeal to emotions because your facts aren't very good? Are we appealing to facts? What kind of person are we looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm an earbud in there when they say the person's name. And then I get to say what percent they match what we're looking for.
Okay. That's how you do it.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's pre-work going in, but to me, it's really exciting. And then also, like, if you're just going in front of a judge, we do the judge's name and the client's name, because you want the client to hear certain things so they know you're doing an excellent job, so they don't get mad at you and then you have a fight to pay, to get paid. And on the other hand, you want to ping your judge in their own issues. So, Rhonda, let's say that we have a judge with the ON like you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we're going to state things and we're going to say, look what happened here. And we're going to give an experience or something that occurred. And then we're going to say, how is that even logical? How does that even make sense? Because we're going to appeal to your logic and your deductive reasoning. Now, let's say they had fairness in their name, like I have that in my name.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to give an experience as the lawyer, and we're going to say, and how fair is that? Would you consider that fair? We're going to keep pinging the judge where they have their own issues and strengths so that they can identify with our client more.
Right. Oh, it's just fascinating. You are listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Symatrex. And I'm speaking with Sharón Lynn Wyeth today. How many people contact you, Sharón?
I don't know. I've worked with thousands over the years, so I've lost track.
Okay. So how many people reach out to you? What's the name of your website, or can they email you?
The easiest way is through the website, knowthename.com, and know is KNOW. And I always say, to help the memory, is that when you're getting home and you have a time to write down, because you could be listening to this at work or in the car or shopping,
Yes,
or whatever. And so you're going to say, oh, I need to remember the name of that website. I need to know the name. And then you can go, oh yeah, that was it. Know the name.
Right. Know the name. Good for you. That's fantastic. And within your website, they can also sign up for a newsletter.
They can sign up for a newsletter and access to the third book absolutely free. It's Know the Name, Know How to Connect. And Rhonda, I think communication is so important, especially in this time period of what's happening in our world.
Oh, yes.
So you get access to that book absolutely free, because our communication styles, our feelings are represented in our vowels, and our attitudes are represented in the consonants. So I literally share that book just on the vowels, just to freely help and assist everybody in improving their relationships.
Oh, well, that is wonderful. What a fantastic gift. Thank you so much. So what about your second book that you wrote, which was Know the Name, Know the Spirit? How can you speak to us about that, and what really does that mean? Know the Spirit?
Would love to. The Know the Name, Know the Person is about somebody's personality and how you can decipher what their beliefs are, how they're going to feel, how they're going to behave according to the personality. So Know the Name, Know the Spirit is from the soul's perspective. Okay. What did the soul come to experience? What is the soul choosing to do? And it's literally, how do you meet the requirements of your soul? Okay, so the first book's on personality. The second book is on your soul's blueprint and your soul's mission.
It's fascinating. Can you give us an example of that?
Okay. So let's say that you have an AH combination in your name, like some Sarahs end with an AH.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it has to be in that order. Okay, the A comes first. And when somebody has that, that says that they are now on mission for God. And when I was checking it after I thought I'd gotten all the patterns out, I went back to the Bible to say, would the people that are talked about in the Bible have done what they said they would do? Would that show up in their name? And in the very book of Genesis, it says Sarai becomes Sarah and Abram becomes Abraham. Both of them got an AH in their names. And that was the difference. And that's when God put them on mission. And only 2% of the population at ever one time is on mission for God. So if they have an AH somewhere in their name, that says that they're on mission for God in this lifetime. And for everybody who has mission of God envy, that means that you're not here this lifetime for you. You're here for God and for others. So you're not going to get your turn. So don't envy those people.
Right. Okay. Do you feel that you've been called to what you're doing right now?
I do, from the background. If you think about it, with all the math training and then getting my master's, that is all of the thinking patterns, and and math is only patterns. Okay, so my brain is so trained in patterns, and Neimology science is just pointing out the patterns in the letters. And then I started teaching school in a public school when I was 20. So I had a lot of years where I wasn't formulated in my, locked in my positions, but I was willing to keep learning and keep figuring out how to be a better teacher all the time. And so I got all those people experiences because I was teaching 150 students during the day, and then I was teaching college classes at night. So I had another 180 students in the evenings throughout the year. So I was given a lot of data and interactions with people with their names. So when I started doing this, you think about the data field that I had to start putting together the patterns.
That's incredible. So what extraordinary discovery have you found in your life?
That you can get along with anybody and everybody if you only want to. It's totally possible when you understand who they are, and all judgments go away, and all envy or putting somebody on a pedestal or any of that type of thing, it all goes away once you know somebody's name, because you get insight into their soul and how they're expressing that soul. And it's so beautiful to see all the different expressions. I look at it as we're all expressions of God, and what a variety we have, just like all the snowflakes are different. And I think what's also interesting is the depth of relationship and the topics you can talk about, because people don't feel judged once they know that you get them.
Boy, you are just so full of information that my brain is just twirling around here, thinking of so many things that I want to ask you. There's going to be people out there that have the letter I in their name. Is there anything, can you tell us about the letter I and what that would mean?
Okay, so if we're talking about the singular letters, the placement of where it appears is important. So an I can be a first vowel, and I can be a middle letter, or the I could be the last letter of a name. So it means something different. So if it's the last letter of a name, like Tammy or Jamie, some names end in an I. Okay, so that would mean I cannot get enough attention. I need more attention. I'm a bottomless pit for how much attention I can hold and handle. Okay. So then if it's in the middle of the name someplace, it's a middle letter, it means that person is very independent. Don't try to put them underneath your thumb, because they're not going to stay there, and they're not going to stay around. They're too independent. And if it's in the first vowel of the name, it says that they are the natural leaders. So when the boss says do X, Y, Z, and somebody doesn't understand what that means, they don't go to the boss to ask, they go to the first vowel of an I person to ask.
Okay.
And first vowel of an I usually do better working for themselves unless they're given a great deal of autonomy. And it's
Mhm.
also inclusivity is very important to them. So
Yes.
if you are living with somebody that has a first vowel of an I, then you would say, hey, I'm going to the kitchen to get me something. Do you want anything while I'm up? Or I'm going to the grocery store. Would you like to come with me? Or do you want me to pick up anything for you? Or all of us decided that we're going to go ice skating. Would you like to come? So always including them in what you're going to do causes them to feel loved. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, if it's the first vowel in the last name instead of the first name is all about the individual, but the last name is about their environment. So if the first vowel of an I is in the last name, it says they're being taught that blood is thicker than water. And you've got
Oh,
family responsibilities.
okay. All right. And so then moving into the other vowels, what about a U in a name?
Well, again, it depends on its placement. If
Hmm.
it's the first vowel in a name, it says that these people are our entertainers, that they're unusual in some way, how they express themselves or what they choose to do for fun, that they're entertaining, they keep our attention. They have a very short attention span. And so they got to keep the conversation moving or it'll jump all over in no logical order. They do a little of this and they jump back over there and do a little of that. Okay. For a gift, for the first vowel of a U, for an example, they're going to want a new experience. Again, because they don't want to be bored. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and they're also usually seeking spirituality in some form or another.
Right.
Okay. And it's easier for them to go deep into spirituality because they just look at things differently.
Hmm. And so I guess what I did is I skipped over the E. Can we go back to the E?
Sure. The first vowel of an E, those are the people that have an aesthetic eye. They're the ones that you see if there's a crooked picture on the wall, they walk by and straighten it out because it just looks better.
Okay.
They're the ones to take shopping with you because, like, if I have a first vowel of an A, I only care if I'm covered and I'm comfy. But the first vowel of an E will also care if it looks good. So you take one of those shopping with you. So you just not are in sweats all day long. Okay.
Mhm.
So they will always notice. And they notice they're artistic. They have an artistic sense. They also have a great sense of humor. The E's and the U's have a great sense of humor. And then the first vowel of an E, also, they're great listeners. So people like to come and dump their problems on them because they know they're going to be heard. And normally the E gives very good suggestions. One of the challenges for the E is to not say, well, we could do this or we could do that and insert themselves, but instead talk about different ideas with them and share that. And then say, with all of this that we've just discussed, what are you going to do next? It's a really nice way of handing it back to them, saying, it's not my issue. I'm happy to share ideas, but I'm not going to come solve this for you.
Okay. Okay. It's just, I'm just fascinated. I mean, we've already talked for an hour before this, a couple of weeks ago, and I could just continue to talk to you about it. But I think what I'm going to do is download the Know How to Connect and get some more information and do some reading. I'm really looking forward to that. And all of our listeners also, if you've just tuned in, your website is Know the Name. Is that right, Sharón?
Yeah,
I
it's
think I have that right.
knowthename.com, and you're given access to the book, but you don't get to download it.
Oh, you're
You've
given
got to
access.
go into the website, when you sign up for it, you'll be given your email address as your sign in, and you'll be given a password. And then you go to the member site and you just fill it out, and that gives you the whole book online.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I was saying I was going to download it because I'm not going to be doing that at all.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, that's great. Okay. And once they're in there, they can also sign up for your newsletter. Or when they sign in and get their password, does it automatically sign them up for the newsletter?
The answer is yes. And then you can unsubscribe at the bottom of any newsletter if you decide you don't want it. But every newsletter talks about my own radio show, Luminescence, Common Sense Spirituality, where it's a teaching show about real spiritual principles and not some of the stuff that I think, how could anybody believe that? And then it goes through, like your show will be there. Okay, it goes through where I've been interviewed and a blip on all of those shows, encouraging people to listen to those. And then there is an article on names at the bottom of the newsletter every time.
Wonderful. It's just a wealth of information. If decoding, it's like a decoding of your name. And then, it's finding out about who they're working with and who they're having problems with and why they might be having problems with those people and all of those things, which I think is just fascinating. It's remarkable.
Well, I like the fact that the solutions are in our names. So it's not only pointing out potential attractions, why we're attracted to certain people, and then why we're repelled by others, but it literally says how to fix the incidences that are there.
Which is fantastic. That's just fantastic. I mean, it's a resource for everyone, really, if they're interested in this type of thing, which, as I said, I don't know why they wouldn't be. So I just thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us this explanation and getting to know you more and what you've done. I mean, you've been in the education now for how many years?
I was in it for 40 years.
Yes.
And then I said, okay, I think I'm done.
Yes.
Actually, the doctor said I was done because they said I wouldn't be able to stand up all day long anymore. It was giving me vein issues.
Oh, right.
And so they said, get out. And so I said, I just want to finish my 40th year. And that to me was important. I had planned on staying longer. I love teaching the kids. I taught for 29 of the years. And in the middle of those 40 years, I was an administrator for 11 years.
Well, that's fantastic. It's been great having you on the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to let our audience know?
If you don't want to learn the system for yourself, you can always put me on retainer and definitely come get a reading and get the depth and breadth of how much information is in a name, which I think really compels people then to see how easy it is then to learn it for yourself.
Well, that's wonderful. Yes, because you've just touched the surface and you've used my name as an example. But as you say, you could read my name, you could decode my name for an hour or so to tell me the in-depth of it, right?
For 2 hours. I've been known to talk 2 hours on a person's name and just as fast as I talk here with just constant information. Your timing's in a name, Rhonda. When's the best time to do something or when you come to learn something? I mean, besides knowing who you are and why you're here, even your timing is in your name. I mean, it's incredible the amount of information. And I so appreciate, Rhonda, you giving me the opportunity to share this with everyone.
Well, thank you. It's very exciting. I'm really interested in this. It's a very exciting subject. And thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show, Sun on the Water, is composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to take a look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.